My name is Jason Stabinskas. I'm the Managing Director of Los Cerros Limited, and this is a presentation supporting the announcement we made on the 25th of November 2022 regarding the acquisition of Footprint. And I refer you to that announcement for competent person statements, disclaimers and forward-looking statements. The acquisition of Footprint simultaneously re-energized our exploration program. It diversified our portfolio across jurisdictions and also across metals, and we entered the battery metal space with some pretty exciting copper and nickel targets. We also the transaction also involved the founders of Footprint, Glenn and John, joining the company as well. So that brings a lot of local Papua New Guinea experience to the team, familiarity with how things operate in PNG, as well as the geology of PNG, and very, very deep geological expertise more generally, both of them having worked in senior roles at Barrick and for the last 7 years building up the portfolio at Footprint. So we look forward to leveraging their skill set over coming years. The PNG area has traditionally been the domain of tier ones hunting elephant country, and that remains the case. But the models that the tier ones often have is focused on large scale sort of targets, and they have internal selection criteria that defines what they're chasing. That creates opportunities for juniors that can come in and use different models, different geological models and so on, to pursue opportunities that perhaps don't resonate with the selection criteria of the majors. And we saw this in Colombia as well 5 or 6 years ago when we moved into Colombia, that the fact that it is the domain of majors creates opportunities for juniors like us. And that's what we're seeing in Papua New Guinea as well. There are 2 targets within the portfolio that were particularly compelling for immediate impact, high impact exploration. And we'll be, I'll explain more about those in coming slides, but one's called Kusi, which is a gold copper target, and which is a really exciting nickel target that I look forward to telling you about. But given the portfolio is so significant, and we also have the portfolio in Colombia as well, we're also open to JV earn-ins and similar to progress all of these targets concurrently, because they're all very, very compelling targets. This sample you see here, this is from Kusi, and I'll talk about Kusi in the next few slides, but this one in particular, this is an exposure of outcrop at Leah's Lode, grading 61.3 grams per tonne gold and 18% copper with some silver credits. So it's an amazing outcrop of material at Leah's Lode that we hope to see drilled very shortly. So here are the 5 main areas. So Emu is up in the highlands, and the others are in the Owen Stanley Range. But sort of general geology, this is the arc, the mountain building arc, and where we see these exciting major discoveries through PNG, they're often associated with arc normal structures. In other words, structures that come off 90 degrees from the arc, and you seem to get big discoveries in these. And again, similarities to Colombia, where I often talked about the north-south trending structures and these secondary structures coming off of those tending to be associated with major discoveries through Colombia. So it's the same idea here, it's just the other side of the major plate systems. So on to the Ono project. This is inclusive of the Kusi target. It's about 120 kilometers from Lae, and it's a good road through much of that, and then an acceptable road, and then dirt track through to Sim, and Kusi is close to Sim. But you can still again see in this image the arc structure, and then the arc normal being a host of Kusi and Garawaria and Cow Creek and so on, and potential for further exploration and success to the southwest. So that's the major structures. Now let's zoom in onto Kusi. This has been drilled previously, but as I was talking earlier about the models, the targeting systems that tier ones have, here previous drilling was in pursuit of the central porphyry system, the engine, if you like, driving this whole sort of occurrence of copper and gold we see through the Kusi area. And in the process of pursuing that porphyry, they drilled through a skarn that is of considerable interest to us, perhaps not to them, but certainly to us. There are 3 drill holes of interest: 10 meters at 2.39, 20 meters at 2.89, and 35 meters at 3. And this skarn unit, that is our focus in the immediate term, also daylights in several locations around Kuusi. And there's a trench at 20 meters at one of those exposures at 3.84 grams per tonne, 18 meters at 11.5. There's another trench 71 meters at nearly 5 grams per tonne with some copper as well. Whilst those grades are really exciting, the trench itself runs along the lithology, not across the lithology. So 71 meters is a bit misleading, but the grades are still very, very encouraging. So this is the plan view of the area, and those holes that I was pointing out as hole 4, hole 7, hole 3, and then trenching here and trenching here of that exposed skarn limestone unit running through here. So this area itself is where we'll see much of the attention in Q1 with drilling planned for late in the quarter. Presumably there's a porphyry causative system, causative intrusive, driving the whole system. But what's really interesting at a sort of a macro level, and the opportunity that we see at Kuusi, is this limestone unit, this skarn, is modelled outcrop all the way around here. So whilst we are focused on this area, we'll certainly also be doing some scout work to understand what the potential full extent of this really exciting gold skarn could be. There is another outcrop over here called Leah's Lode. Now this is this year. This is a discovery this year, this outcropping skarn. And we're not too sure what the relationship is between that skarn and this broader unit. It could be the same unit and it sort of wraps around this in this direction, which is great because it gives you an idea of potential volume and size of the skarn unit. Or it could be a completely new skarn unit, which is equally exciting because it gives us a whole new mineralized unit. And you can see it's pretty spectacular, 8 meters at 11.5 grams per tonne. I'll show you a photo from Leah's Lode shortly. Now I'm going to take you to a cross-sectional view, A to A prime, to give you an idea of the sort of modelled, stylized geological structures that we think are at play here. So big porphyry intrusive body is driving this whole system. As the metal-laden fluids from the intrusive body percolate through the country rock, through these sort of little finger dikes and such that we've noticed in some of the drill core, it eventually hits this limestone unit. Now, the limestone geochemistry is a bit different to other lithologies, and you tend to get chemical reactions happening when these fluids pass through these limestones to create these skarns. It kind of works like a chemical trap and traps the gold and the copper. And that's what's of most interest to us. And you can see they've drilled through it a few times. There is exposure of that limestone on both sides with trenching results that are really exciting. But what's really encouraging is the fact that these drill holes are some 300 meters into the mountain and still hitting that skarn unit. So it's not just a superficial occurrence. These things are, this limestone skarn and all that gold extends well and truly into the mountain itself. So that's a really compelling target for us, especially when you consider that this skarn has a massive regional scale. So whilst we'll focus on this, we've also got plenty of large-scale opportunity in this skarn unit as well. There is a second limestone unit deeper down the side of the mountain, and there's exposure over here that was logged as well. And that's mineralized, 28 meters at 0.9. But you can see it also has elevated lead and zinc, and that's exactly as what you'd expect because we're off to the side. We're distal to the causative porphyry, and when you move further away from the porphyry source, you tend to get elevated lead and zinc, and as you move in closer, you get more copper and gold occurring. So another limestone skarn unit over here to pursue as well, in addition to pursuing the porphyry system itself. Now, let me take you to this is the southernmost of the 5 license areas. This is where the Solomon plate is colliding with the Australian plate, and ultramafics are being lifted up and exposed in this area. And so it's the address where you would expect to see nickel occurrences being in this ultramafic unit. This is a creek, the very creek, and I've walked up this creek. And here's a sample of this ultramafic material that we're talking about, and that runs at 23.3% nickel and 10.6 grams per tonne gold. But what I also point out to you, while looking at this this float sample, is notice that it's rounded. You've got some rounded edges here. Now that suggests that it's been in the creek for a long time, and it's probably been mobilized down the creek, and so it's been rounded through time. But as we walk up the creek, we see more and more of these float samples heading up the creek, and they become more angular as you get higher up, which suggests you're getting closer to the source because it hasn't had as much time to be mobilized and rounded through geological time. And here's some of those float samples, and they're all amazing nickel grades: 15%, 11, 10, 19, 15, 23, 26. There's a sample there grading 45.8% nickel. So amazing grades for nickel sulfides. And when I was walking up this creek, I made it sort of halfway up to the top of the ridge, and obviously the samples, the float was getting more angular, but the source of that material must be somewhere between where I was standing and the ridge in the foreground, because obviously if the occurrence was on the other side of the ridge, the float would have fallen down the other side of the ridge, not on this side. So, and this is what I mean by being a very compelling high impact area for investigation, because we can use this very simple technique to sort of zero in on where this system might be, based on just simply mapping the location of the float and sort of vectoring back up the creek until we find the source of the material. So this will see some action very quickly. Now onto the other targets, and I don't want to dismiss these other targets because we're focusing on Kusi and Very. These are all very exciting targets as well, mainly in the porphyry space, but there's some epithermals and skarns as well. We'd like to see some attention at these as well, and this is why I mentioned the point earlier about open to the idea of JVs and farm-ins to see that these targets advance as well. This sample is from Ube, one of the targets in the area, and that grades at 9.5% copper and 156 grams per ton gold. This is the Ube target here in the southern part of the portfolio. This is very the nickel occurrence I was talking about earlier. There is another target in the north called Liamu. This is a large surface geochem anomaly made mainly from rock chips, and quite often those rock chips are grading quite high grade copper and gold. There is a zone grading mapped 40 veins per meter in a porphyry style stockwork, and I've been to Dada, and I've stood here looking at these 40 veins in the stockwork, and this is really interesting. To give you an idea of sort of why 40 veins per meter is interesting, at Tesorito, when we got that sort of level of density of veining, that associated with the really exciting material at Tesorito in the halo of the porphyry. So we're getting that sort of material right on surface, and it's elevated in gold, obviously not particularly high grade, but a very encouraging surface expression of what could be under the Dada area. Ube is a very large surface geochem anomaly, mainly from rock chips, not from soils, and quite often those rock chips are grading over 2% copper and 2 grams per ton gold. So again, a very compelling, exciting target. The Talia project, this is in the Bismarck intrusive complex, and downstrike, same geological structure, downstrike from the huge Yandira copper moly porphyry discovery, which is owned by IRA on the TSX. TSXV. Emu is another one of the targets, and this is in elephant country, as you can see in that map. I'm sure you recognize some of those names like Oktedi and Porgera. Emu itself is again a large geochemical anomaly. This has been drilled by Footprint and got 305 meters at 0.37% copper and 0.37 grams per ton gold, essentially from surface. There is a section in there, 14 meters at 2.43% copper and 2.78 grams per ton gold. So a really exciting porphyry style target, but also within Emu we have high grade epithermal targets and similar. Michael's Creek is an epithermal target, and there's a sample there from Michael's Creek at 58.5 grams per ton gold. High Creek is a copper gold skarn target, much like what we see at Kusi. And Bikaru is an epithermal target we hope to see some attention at in the near term as well. So on to the transaction itself. There was a $350,000 payment as part of the acquisition, so it wasn't a huge dent in our 11 million cash reserves, and the issue of 10% of the company's stock, so 65 million shares, and 80% of that is escrowed for 12 months. And of course, we welcome Glenn and John to the team, and I look forward to their massive contributions. And now this is that Leah's Lode photo that I mentioned at the start. This is the limestone at Kusi. That's John there, and that's myself. This exposure here grades at 61.3 grams per ton gold, 18% copper, and 135 grams per ton silver. And there's another section up here that is really exciting as well. I think it was 20-something% copper, lower gold, but 20 or so % copper. And as you can imagine, John and myself spent a lot of time walking around this area, understanding the distribution of mineralization at Leah's Lode. As I mentioned before, a discovery this year, so a whole new area of interest for us. So what does the transaction, what impact does the transaction have on our capital structure? So after the deal is done, we'll have 715.7 million shares on issue and 64 million options and performance rights to give a fully diluted 772.7 million shares on issue. I will remind you that we do have research coverage appearing on the likes of Sprott, Far East Capital, Euroz, and Canaccord. And again, this is another sample from very, very grading 23.3% nickel and 10.6 grams per ton gold. So again, another amazing sample of nickel sulfides coming out of very, very. So moving forward, we have a 3,000 meter drilling program planned for Kusi. That will start in Q1, more likely late Q1, so in March. And that will test that known area of skarn mineralization defined by historic drilling in those trenches. But also, whilst that's running, we'll also be doing some more sort of scout exploration to understand the full extent of that skarn limestone unit and just how far does it go to the west and then curve around in the north. So we'll be pursuing that whilst we're preparing for and in the early stage drilling. Concurrent with that, we have a geophysics and prospecting program planned for Very, the high-grade nickel target. And of course, running concurrent with all that is the Quinchilla studies in Colombia. So putting some detail and some robustness around the 2.6 million ounces that define the Quinchilla resource. And also running alongside that in Colombia is the finalization of the environmental impact assessment submission, which is the last of the formal submissions for seeking approval for development of Miraflores, which is the advanced subset of the 2.6 million ounce Quinchilla resource. And I'm not suggesting we go into production there, or that is on the horizon, but submitting all these documentations in anticipation of being able to do that at some point in the future. So it's an exciting time for us with re-energized exploration, well funded with the capacity to fund significant exploration programs, including the Kusi drilling in Q1 of next year. So stay tuned. It's bound to be an exciting 2023 for the company. And thanks for your time.